Again, welcome on Imoto TV. Today we've got a very honored guest. We've got Mr. Motorman. I think if you've seen our videos, you've seen WesBank. So now very interesting developments have happened. And before we get to it, I'd like to welcome Mr. Msibi. Mr. Msibi, welcome to our program.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I think we're most honored to have you here. I think as Mr. Motorman, I think people would like to know, you've been appointed CEO of WesBank Motor. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell us about your rise to the position that you're in right now.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. It's been a 16-year journey within financial services specifically. I have a background largely in the insurance and the banking environment. Simple guy from Soweto, there's nothing unique about it. And I think largely the opportunities have been, very favorable. I'm very privileged to have had people that I have worked with over my career that have continued to back and trust me. And I think the recent one is no different. A brand as large as WesBank, very well established within the markets where it operates, to give a young man like myself an opportunity to head up their motor business. So it's definitely been a very humbling experience so far.
Now, you mentioned WesBank, and I think we all know how big WesBank is. If you're talking motor industry, in terms of financing, this is the big one. But in your growth, what has been your greatest challenge leading up to the position that you're in right now?
Yeah, I think it's always going to be difficult coming into, largely in my case, very mature, very successful organizations and make an impact. And I think that's always been my challenge, in that I've always joined organizations that were successful in their own right, and that were already well established within their own industries and their own sectors. And so, coming in as a young man with a lot of ambition and almost trying to introduce creativity and innovation into what was working was always going to be a challenge, And again, as I say, WesBank is no different, because there's no question about it. It works. The recipe works. However, I think there are definitely a lot more other things that we are challenged to do differently and do more creatively. And that remains the challenge, to be able to change the sphere of thinking in terms of what works, and then trying to make sure that we become more creative and get the people to back that.
I think one of the things that I've seen now is your sponsorship of Cars.coza. That has really grown big with your involvement. So is it that type of creative thinking, using new technologies, using new strategies that people haven't really used before, where you're getting WesBank involved?
100%. So I think it's known within the automotive circles largely that as WesBank, we pride ourselves in partnerships that ultimately, one, favor the customers, but secondly also make sure that our dealer and our OEM partners are ultimately benefiting from whatever arrangements we get into. So Cars.coza is one of such partnerships that we've gotten into, and as you've rightfully said, it's gained a lot of traction, very positive, very well received by the consumers whom are voting in that competition. Festival of Motoring is another such event where we obviously have gotten involved. And I think of the last two that have also happened, we have fantastic support. So people have loved it. So I think it's exactly the kind of thinking, the kind of innovation to say, how do we get involved in initiatives that not only just commercially make sense for WesBank as a brand, but allows for WesBank to be able to contribute into the communities where our people live, the drivers of the vehicle access the cars and experience it, because cars are an emotional buy, and South Africans love their cars. And so we feel it is our responsibility to make sure that we bring that experience to the people and allow consumers to interact with the brands that they truly love.
Speaking of consumers, one of the things which I found very interesting, which you've been pioneering, is consumer literacy in their own language. You started working on this, and you've been championing it. But what is the significance in terms of the customer getting to understand this jargon that usually is in English, but you've been championing, saying, let's give it to people in their own language?
So, I mean, I think South Africa is a very diverse country. And while we all revert to using English, it's not everybody's primary language and not everybody understands English. But having said that, people make decisions on a daily basis on things that they don't necessarily always fully understand. And so as WesBank, we found it to be quite an integral part of making sure that we take people on this journey such that they make informed decisions, especially decisions that have got a financial impact. And so we are convinced that if you learn anything that may consider to be difficult in your own mother tongue, it's that much easier to adopt, that much easier to accept. And, you talk about jargon, and there's a lot of jargon in the automotive industry. And we have found that, this has landed exceptionally well, especially in our rural areas, where people may not have historically had the opportunity to engage such terms. So we definitely remain committed to the consumer education initiatives. We continue to remain very, very committed to making sure that the literacy levels of all South Africans allows them to be able to make informed decisions. Then guys really make decisions that ultimately they understand and they can make commitments to.
Coming back to the motoring industry, what do you foresee happening in 2019, which I think people need to be mindful of, and what are the impacts that you think that the industry should be certain of?
Yeah, so Sponyola, it's a definite theme that we've seen over the last few years, but I think specifically this year sticks out for a number of reasons. One, we get into national elections in the country, and so with national elections, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of guessing. Who's going to win, by what percentage, what does that mean, what policies are coming in, and so business and consumer confidence levels are not necessarily at their highest as they anticipate the results. That's number one. Number two, this year has been no different to last year, but we continue to see very tough trading conditions, driven largely by international issues, but also by South African matters. I mean, never underestimate the implications or the impact of an ESCOM load shedding into the country. Don't underestimate the impact of increases in petrol prices. Don't underestimate the changes in terms of, or the threat rather, in terms of the downgrading of the country, etc. So there are a lot of things that are happening at the same time. And so we looking at the previous year's performance just based on what the market sold, we think there's definitely going to be a lot of pressure in this year in terms of new car sales. We definitely think that the market will be subjected to, as I've said, very, very tough trading conditions. And we think the consumer will continue to feel significant pressure in this year, as they have in previous years. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting, and the industry will definitely have to hold on.
Now, getting into another very, I think, challenging aspect, we see transformation, and we look at transformation in the financial and the automotive industry. How do you foresee WesBank playing a role in terms of development? I'll look at development first, and then how do you foresee WesBank playing a role in terms of financial transformation in South Africa?
Yeah, so I mean, one can drill that question into two pieces. So, the one is just around the transformation of the industry at large. And my view on this matter, and I'm very vocal on it, is that the automotive industry lags the curve from a transformation point of view. I think I work in spaces where I think there's definitely a lot of work to be done from a transformation perspective. And I hear a lot of talks in corridors, I hear a lot of talks in conferences, I hear a lot of talks in meetings, but I am yet to see the commitment to back that. I don't want to discount, some of the initiatives that are being done by different individuals, but I think it's still small scale relative to the size of this industry. So there's definitely massive opportunities in that space. So from a WesBank point of view, I'm sitting here as a black man, so I think there's definitely acknowledgement even from our side that there's definitely a need to transform even our own participation into the industry. But I think there's definitely still a lot of work. Then we talk about transformation in terms of the financial literacy. I think you mentioned the side. So I think there's also again a deliberate piece of work that must be done linked to the consumer initiatives that we do. And that initiative really talks to about how do we make sure then that at the time consumers engage with finance and insurance representatives at point of sale, they are aware of their own financial positions. We talk largely about, we do a lot of press releases on consumer education, but again, specifically to financial management, cash flow management. How do you make sure that you navigate in your own life based on your own affordability outside of just the price of the car to total cost of ownership? And we really try and spend a lot of time in making sure that our consumers understand that there is more to owning a car than just being able to pay the installment. And the products that we also have, we also try and make sure that we have a wide array of products that covers insurance from a comprehensive perspective, that covers value-added products, that covers instances of retrenchment. Which happens, especially in these tough economic conditions. A lot of our brothers and sisters are subjected to such, and you still have this installment, etc. So I think there's obviously scope to continue to do what we're doing, but we are very much committed to investing in the change.
So there's a lot more to come from WesBank when we look at just development and also transformation in the industry.
Most definitely. I think there's no question about it. We understand as a participating entity in the context of the South African narrative that transformation is not a tick box exercise. It should never be. Transformation is really supposed to be, in our view, very much invested in moving the country forward by bringing a cohort of diverse views into a room. And so the way we look at transformation, it's not just about race, it's not just about gender, but it's just also the transformation of thinking in terms of the things we do. How do we transform in how we do business, as we historically have done? How do we transform in how we engage with our customers? So for us, transformation is definitely a very broad concept, but in as far as, transformation of gender and race, most definitely you can expect more. And lastly, we are proud. We have recently also announced our first black female regional manager in the history of WesBank in this very same narrative of transformation. Junior Shabangu, who are very, very homebred, very, very excited about her appointment as well. So there's definitely a lot more on the calendar for us.
Mr. Msibi, thank you so much for this. I think the viewers at home will really get to understand where WesBank is going and how they get involved. And I'm quite keen on how your transformation, looking at how you are providing literacy in people's own language, because we miss the point. We always look obviously at the race, but then we forget what you are doing in terms of how do we transform, how we do take the information that people haven't really gotten in their own language, and now they're going to get this information in a language they understand. And you're saying WesBank is going to be there to make sure that it goes with them in understanding and avoid the financial mess that people always get themselves into.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thanks to the people out there for continuing to support the brand. We remain invested. Thank you.